Do you think watercolors have to be neat and controlled? Well, think again, because today I'm sharing the easiest way to combine watercolors with an embossed image by embracing the mess. Using simple watercolor smush techniques over an embossed background, I will create a vibrant, one of a kind card that's both easy and fun. This video is also part of the Alter New Ambassador Instagram giveaway, so be sure to check the description box below for the giveaway details and your chance to participate. Well, hello everyone, I'm Revati and welcome to my crafty space. Let's get started. For today's card, I wanted to step outside my usual floral design, so I reached for this fun geometric elements stamp set from Altenio. Now, although it's one of their older stamp sets, it's still incredibly versatile and it even has coordinating dies. Now, the set is filled with some unique geometric images that are perfect for creating beautiful repeating patterns on your card fronts. There are so many creative ways you could use this. You can follow the same watercolor technique that I'm sharing today, or you could stamp and die cut each of those geometric elements individually, then arrange and adhere them onto your card front to create a striking modern geometric design. The possibilities of this particular stamp sets are endless. I usually reach for the Altenews watercolor brush markers whenever I'm watercoloring, but today I decided to give this 36 watercolor pan set a try, and I have to say I'm absolutely in love with it. Now, this is a new one that I have, so I was really excited to use this. Now, the set includes 36 vibrant half pan watercolors housed in a beautiful, sturdy, and convenient plastic case. It even comes with a water brush that fits neatly inside, making it perfect for crafting on the go. Now, one feature I really appreciate is that the lid doubles as a mixing palette, so you can easily blend custom shades without needing any extra supplies. It's such a thoughtfully designed set and incredibly convenient to use. The packaging also includes a color chart that showcases all the 36 watercolor shades along with their names, making it easy to identify and keep tracks of colors that you're using. That's especially helpful if you want to recreate the color combination on a future project. While you can certainly mix and customize colors while using the built-in palette, well, I am keeping things very simple for our card today. This is one of those techniques that is incredibly beginner friendly, and you definitely don't need any experienced watercolor artist to achieve these beautiful results. The beauty of this technique is that it embraces a loose and playful approach, allowing the colors to blend naturally and create unique effects with very little effort. I started by arranging the stamps onto a piece of watercolor cardstock, positioning the design diagonally across the left side of the panel. As I placed each of those images, I made sure that the geometric shapes lined up neatly with the adjacent ones to create a seamless pattern. Next, I stamped these images using a white pigment ink and then added white heat embossing powder to give that beautiful embossed effect. Now, this step creates a beautiful raised outline that helps define the design once we add our fun watercolors. Now, you could definitely add black embossing powder or even clear embossing powder. Once you add the watercolor, all that embossed image will resist the ink, which means that your image will not get lost between all that beautiful colors. Now, if you're new to stamping or new to card making altogether, don't let this embossing intimidate you. You can absolutely skip this step and go straight to the watercolor smush technique that I'll be demonstrating next. You'll still end up with a gorgeous abstract background, and it is a beautiful way to ease into watercoloring while having fun with the process. Now, even though watercolor cardstock is much more thicker than your regular cardstock, I still like to take a few extra precautions when heat embossing. I always let my heat tool warm up for a second before bringing it to the paper. That way, the embossing powder melts much more quickly, reducing the amount of heat applied to the cardstock. As I'm heat setting the embossing powder, I also keep the heat tool moving continuously instead of holding it in one spot. This helps minimize any warping and keeps the watercolor panel as flat as possible. Now for the really fun part, which is watercolor smushing. Now one of the easiest way I found to create this look is by applying the watercolor onto a piece of clear plastic. This is actually an old piece of packaging that I saved from my stash. I never throw these away because they are the perfect for ink smushing technique. This technique isn't limited just to watercolors, or you could do it beautifully with your ink pads, giving you a completely different but equally gorgeous effect. Now, since this is a fairly messy technique, I like to keep everything organized in the beginning. So I have my watercolor panel placed right in the center of my workspace, my watercolor palette off to the left, and my plastic sheet onto the right. Having everything within easy reach makes the process quick, fun, and, well, a lot less messy. Alteneu also offers watercolor tubes, and those are another fantastic option for this technique. They are much more heavily pigmented, so a little goes a long way. I actually have another video where I used watercolor tubes to create a similar background, so if you'd like to see them in action, be sure to check that video as well. Now, for today's card, I decided to use my all time favorite color combination, which is pink and orange. There's something so cheerful and comforting about these two colors together, and they always make me smile. So I began by picking up a light shade of pink with my paintbrush and applied it onto the plastic sheet. Then I gave it a light spritz of water to activate the pigment and help spread it out even more. Now, once I was happy with the consistency, all I did was simply picked up the plastic sheet and pressed it onto my watercolor panel, transferring all of that beautiful color. Now, the intensity of the color or the pigment or the amount of water that you use definitely depends on the look that you're going for. I just wanted a lot more splotchy effect, a lot more watery effect, and I noticed that more the water you use, more smoother results you get. I didn't want any harsh lines on this panel. Well, for this design, I'm concentrating the color only around the stamped geometric images rather than covering the entire panel. You'll notice the pink stays mostly in the upper left hand corner while the orange is added towards the lower portion of the panel, creating a soft diagonal flow of color across the design. I repeated the same exact process with the pink, adding a second layer to build up the color and create a little more depth and vibrancy. Before moving on to the orange, I made sure to thoroughly clean both my paintbrush and the plastic sheet. This helps keep the colors nice and crisp without accidentally mixing the pink and orange. And as a bonus, taking a few moments to clean everything also gives the watercolor panel enough time to dry before you begin adding the next color. Now, another way to do this technique is to place the watercolor directly onto your craft mat or your work surface and then turn your panel upside down to pick up the color. That method works beautifully too, but I personally prefer using a clear plastic sheet because it's transparent. I can see exactly where the color is going in relation to my stamped images. It gives me much more control over the placement of the watercolor, making it easier to build the design exactly where I want it to. Once I was happy with the two layers of the pink and orange, I decided to take the background a step further by adding another layer of color. This time, instead of using the same shades, I reached for slightly deeper tones of both the pink and the orange. Adding darker shades on top helps bring in more dimension and makes the color feel richer without losing that soft watercolor effect. I repeated the same ink smushing process, applying the darker watercolor onto my plastic sheet, adding a little bit of water to loosen the pigment, and then carefully transferring it onto my panel. Now, since I wanted to maintain control over the placement of the colors, I continued to add the darker shades only in the areas where I wanted a little more intensity. Now, before adding this additional layer, I made sure my panel was completely dry. This little bit of patience really helps when building up watercolor layers because the colors blend much more smoothly and don't become too muddy. Now, it also allows you to see exactly where you need more color and where you want to preserve those beautiful lighter areas. Now, what I love the most about this background is the way all that color transitions together. We don't just have that beautiful blend between the pink and orange areas, but within each color itself, there's a lovely variation from the light to the darker tones. The softer pinks gradually deepen into richer pink tones, and the same happens with the orange, thereby creating a beautiful layered watercolor effect. Now it's time to add some fun splatters. Well, I picked up some of that black watercolor with my paintbrush, making sure to load the paintbrush with enough pigment and water. Now, instead of waiting for the panel to dry completely, I decided to add the splatters while the watercolor background was still slightly damp. The reason is that I wanted to create a softer, more organic look. When you splatter on damp surface, the black watercolor slightly blooms and spreads into the background, giving you the most beautiful, splotchy, imperfect marks. This creates a more blended artistic feel rather than those crisp, defined splatters you would get on your completely dry panel. I just love how this little detail adds contrast to the bright pink and orange background while still keeping that loose, playful watercolor feel. I then moved on to creating my sentiment. I stamped the word hello from the same stamp set onto a piece of black cardstock and white heat embossed it to make it really stand out against that dark background. Once it was heat set, I trimmed it down into a small sentiment strip. Now, since I already had my paper trimmer out, I also decided to trim down my watercolor panel. I cut it to 4 by 5 1/4 inches, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card front. Now, this gives the panel a nice border when it's adhered onto the card base and helps the watercolor background really become the focal point of our design. I absolutely love how this panel turned out, and I can't wait to try this technique with a different color combination. Let me know in the comments below what colors would you like to see me try next. I then went ahead and adhered my sentiment strip right in the center of that little rectangle, making sure it's positioned nicely over the colorful watercolor background. I love how that simple black and white sentiment creates that beautiful contrast against all those vibrant shades of pink and orange while allowing the geometric design to still shine through. Next, I mounted the entire watercolor panel onto a top folding A2 size card base using foam tape. A little bit of height from the foam tape adds that extra touch of interest and gives the card a more finished and dimensional look. Well, a simple and fun technique is never complete without a little bit of sparkle. I pulled out some of my favorite stellar sequences and added a few around the sentiment to bring in that extra touch of shine and dimension. I love how these little embellishments catch the light and complement the vibrant watercolor background without taking away from the beautiful geometric design. And well, with that final touch of bling, our card is complete. And with that, our watercolor smush geometric card is complete. I hope you enjoy this fun, beginner friendly technique. And well, don't forget this video is part of the Alternate Ambassador Instagram giveaway. So be sure to check the description box for all the giveaway details and information, along with the supply list. And I will have links to all the supplies that I used to create this particular card. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.